I can't upload like the entire like Lion King to YouTube, right? But if I wanted to take somebody else's like professionally published, like totally like they got an entire company behind them sort of thing, if I want to take Brazers, steal their video and upload it to the internet and make money off of it, I can. What's the deal with that shit?
So you're saying you're talking about uploading to YouTube.
Yeah.
So okay, you're saying that you could take you can't take something that's actually like copyrighted or whatnot, like an actual movie, but you're saying you could steal
Unless
something
it's
from.
porn. The only thing that it seems to be okay with, abusing copyright with is pornography.
Well,
It seems to be the only thing it's okay with.
you're talking about YouTube though, but YouTube obviously bans porn just for being porn, regardless of copyright.
Yeah, but I can still do it on a pornography website, and I don't get that.
I don't.
Because I feel like if I tried, like even on Pornhub, if I were to go onto Pornhub right now and try to upload like the entire, what is it called, like Gran Torino. If I tried to upload Gran Torino on Pornhub, I don't think that would work out for me.
Because it's copyright would be the reason you think, or because it's
Yeah,
not porn. Like, do you think they must have some
because
kind
it's
of.
copy. No, because it's copyright. Like Pornhub celebrated that guy who was doing non-pornographic content. They gave him a jacket
Right.
because he reached the same number of views that
Yeah,
people would
but
normally get a jacket at.
but then again, it was a direct parody of like porn. It wasn't just something completely unrelated. Like they may want to actually moderate their content and not have random uploads. I don't know.
I haven't delved too deeply into Pornhub's philosophy, but I would love to talk to somebody who works at Pornhub for sure.
Yeah, I would be interested to research like their like corporate hierarchy and like who kind of makes the decisions there and
Hmm.
how big the company is. I mean, it's obviously must have a decent infrastructure. Um, and they make a good bit of money, I'd imagine. So it's cool. Like that goes like that's the whole thing
That's the
about.
other thing is because they advertise only dick pills and like fucking local milfs and shit like that, and I never click the ads, but they're still making so much
Exactly.
fucking money.
Uh, it gets overlooked because porn itself is just kind and really sexuality itself is kind of like an under. It's just like a very repressed topic that not a lot of people are comfortable talking about. So it just kind of goes low key. But like, hey, this is a legit company. This is a legit business. You know, of course, the meme culture kind of parodies it a lot and makes it a lot more accessible and makes it a lot more mainstream. Like, it's just, hey, porn, it exists. You know, so I don't know.
Yeah. All right. Well, I
It's
mean,
fun.
we definitely had previously discussed a topic that we wanted to get into though, so let's talk about
Yeah,
that.
so I already kind of just started recording in the middle of it, so we could go ahead and get some of that porn talk as the intro. Of course, couldn't miss that.
As soon as you drop Pornhub, I just assumed that you were already recording.
No,
So,
so no, so as we're recording, so we'll start it here. Episode 4, technically, Return of the Jedi with Kris, Grish. We got some titties on cam today. It's getting hot. This episode's going on Pornhub. We kind of decided we wanted to focus on a lot of conversation around gender roles, relationships, yeah, just men and women in the modern society and how that's evolved. And some of those things we kind of did a little bit of. I know you did a lot more.
tech.
You did
It's
more.
the tech part.
The tech, the e girls is what we're here for the E-thots. Like this is the final end all be all conversation. We're gonna get to the bottom of the E-thought. Do we want to call it a pandemic? Like are E-thots that damned? I don't think so. I don't think the
I
E-thought.
don't know. I don't talk to them. I don't interact with them. When I
I,
see that, I block that. Like I'm not into that. Like I don't have respect for
so
women who decide to live like that.
and now define what it is that you consider that lifestyle and why you don't interact with them.
You mean ethos? What do I define as an ethos?
Essentially are e-thots, e-girls. Like yeah, that seems to be a stereotype that we're trying to work around. This like girls in the modern age who utilize platforms. I'll let you define it. But like yeah, what is that to you?
My lowest standard, I guess, for an ethot is a woman who will upload exposing pictures of herself. Like I'm sure that you've seen it before. Like you look at a profile picture and it's like it'll be just cleavage and like the bottom half of her face, right? Like that is the profile picture, right?
I
And
agree.
she's trying to attract men for attention,
Right.
even if it's something as simple as like validation, social validation. Like you're an ethot. That's
Yeah.
my opinion on that. And it can get as bad as the sorts of women who will upload videos of themselves getting like ran by men or taking requests for different self pleasuring activities and stuff like that for various amounts of money. And
So,
like I think a lot of this got exposed to me when that whole David Wu thing was happening. The guy who I think he's a Congress member, but I wasn't able to confirm that.
dude, you want to know
But
something? You want to know something wild?
hmm.
I actually asked him about getting on the show, and he was like, "Yeah, I'm actually down." He didn't end up following up.
You would blow up, dude.
Dude,
You need
yeah,
to get that guy on.
yeah,
Get him
because
on.
man, whenever I first heard about him too, I was like, damn, like here's somebody else on Facebook who's doing some edgy shit. Like before I came across him, I felt like I was the only one who was like doing edgy shit on Facebook. But I really started to add these like the memers from all over the place. I think that's how I kind of met
Hmm.
you, is through this little meme network, and I saw him popping off, and I thought all this shit was funny. And so yeah, I think it would be interesting to maybe he'll come back on one day. I may hit him up again, but yeah, he didn't end up following through for the last podcast. But yeah, I did like it. Was an
You might
interesting
still be able to
phenomenon.
get him, man. I wouldn't stop pursuing that. Sometimes you just need to be a little bit more like, hey, I really want this sort of thing, but just
Yeah,
give a
yeah.
little bit more context
That
to
like
anybody
that
who doesn't understand the
that
whole
like
David Wu thing. This guy came out and he said that he wanted to have everybody, not necessarily dox the E-thots. And again, I hate that term, but he wanted everybody to take these women who were getting money from men and expose them to the IRS, because if it's a legitimate job, then you should be paying taxes, right? And they weren't paying taxes. Most of them weren't. That's why there was the big freak out about it. And so this guy went around and he was like reporting a shit ton of women to the IRS because they weren't paying taxes, and a lot of them were getting millions of dollars a month, millions of dollars a month.
that's crazy.
And just for and they didn't even have to do anything. Like I almost have more respect for a prostitute than I do for a woman who's only willing to expose herself on the internet. But these girls like just giving their photos to lonely men who are willing to shuffle out money and stuff like that.
I mean,
It's
I mean, so
how did we get to this point? How did we get to this point where people lack so much self-respect? Because like you have to have a lack of self-respect in order to do something like
I
that.
disagree. Like I think that you can maintain respect and pride even in that, and it just depends on how you go about it. It's a spectrum. There's a lot of different components of it, but I think in general, like I think women who like the blanket term of sex work, whether that be like Snapchat nudes or actual like sex, and prostitution and escorting, or and that's the thing too, is that that's like more explicit sex work. But I think there's these kind of things that are really kind of in that direction. Like a lot of pop stars, like they are essentially it's the fact that they're on stage and the fact that they're sexy that sells. There's a lot of shit that like there's a lot of movies that sell like just because they have sexy actresses. And then there's also this component that even goes beyond sexy. That's just about attention, like girls who are like therapists, or girls who just talk to men just to give them a company. Like you've heard these stories of like prostitutes, basically like guys will pay them, but they just want someone to talk to. They just want to have like so that
Can
I
you
said,
pull up that Boston Bargain article that I sent you?
sure, yeah, I can pull it up on the actual stream.
Yeah, absolutely.
Let's see here. Should have had it prepared. Gotta scroll out. Here we go. So we got incels. We got some stuff here.
It was more towards the top.
We got.
It's probably the first thing that I sent you.
Oh, yeah, it was. Yeah. So let's go ahead and open that. Let's go ahead and close some of this shit.
You gotta close your Pornhub tabs.
All right. So you had just Googled Foshin Bargain is basically what you did. That's what this link is too. So I mean, I don't know if there's anything I need to actually pull up, but basically it says Faust in the legend traded his soul to the devil in exchange for knowledge. To strike a Foshin bargain is to be willing to sacrifice anything to satisfy a limitless desire for knowledge or power. So
And
it's
a lot of that, in modern standards, especially when you talk about things like ethics, it's not necessarily just that. It stems from that, but what it has become to mean is like you make a deal or you do something without understanding the implications of the thing at the end of the day. It's like the monkey's paw. That probably would have been a better example. I don't know if you ever heard that story, but the guy had like the chance to make 3 wishes or whatever, and like every wish that he made, like it came true, but it wasn't exactly in the way that he understood that it would, come about. Like I want my mom to come back from the dead, and she comes back, but she's a zombie kind of shit.
right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah, so it's just like a clause. It's kind of like the like Fairy Odd Parents as a show was like based on that concept that like it's not always as you wish. There's always a part of it. So I guess the thing that really strikes me about this is the idea. Of course, things like knowledge or power or material gain and whatnot is valuable. There's definitely that's programmed into us evolutionarily at our core. But there's definitely I think where the whole bargain comes about, like what you're really sacrificing is perhaps like your morality or like your self-respect, or there's some kind of more fundamental component that you're essentially selling out. Your dignity, your
I don't even think it's necessarily about that. I think it's just like a societal concept, right? Like you like, and I was thinking about this earlier, like when it comes to like utilitarian thought, right? Like what is the greatest good, right? Like for Hitler's Germany, the greatest good was genocide of the Jews, right? Like that's what made the most people happy, right? That's not good,
allegedly,
right? But
yeah.
but according to utilitarian ethics, like what is the greatest good for the greatest number? Like that is what that was arguing for, right? So sometimes we implement things in society and we don't understand how they're going to impact them. Like ever since we created social media, ever since like Facebook and MySpace and stuff like that, we've seen teen suicide rates skyrocket.
Right.
And I think there's a direct correlation between that. I think that a lot of people spend a lot of time alone, and that's kind of why I like doing this podcasting thing, because it gets people actually talking and communicating and relating to each other and stuff like that.
Hell yeah.
It's a little bit more different than reading text on a page. It's a little bit more personal, but
Exactly.
especially with the concept on modern dating and the way that I sent you another article that was about how our birth rate in the United States has reached a record low in history. Like we're seeing all of these different changes in society, and it all happened really quickly after social media and a lot of these like apps and all of our focus on screens. Even right now, I'm staring at you through a screen. Yeah, I don't know. I just I think that that stuff like Tinder, Plenty of Fish, other online dating apps have definitely changed the conceptualization around the way that women feel about dating. I think that women have tried to take on a more male role when it comes to dating. They realize that they don't need to settle down. They don't care about that anymore, especially since like they're all trying to go to college and get careers and stuff like that. And it seems like a lot of men are becoming incels. I'm not sure if you've heard of that term before.
Yeah, I definitely have.
And there's a lot of men right now who express that like they're not able to find partners, but women are just like catching record rates of STDs.
Interesting. So these are like there's a lot of kind of angles and statistics and like side effects you're bringing up for sure. Yeah, I don't know. I guess I haven't spent too much time with it, and that's why this would be a great opportunity to kind of go down some of these threads. I mean,
Hmm.
my first take, like if we want to talk about, if we want to kind of focus on technology and how that has kind of altered the I don't know, the dating sphere, how it's altered the nuclear family life, how it's altered the birth rates. Like I guess that would be a place to start. So my thing I think about, I know a good bit of friends who have met on Tinder.
Hmm.
I've met honestly the last 6 or 7 girls I've talked to has been Facebook. I've met and guys too. I've met a lot of cool people on Facebook. A lot, 90% of the people I've met in the last couple of years, and especially those relationships that I've maintained and the good connections have been Facebook, and they've been almost entirely maintained through Facebook. And so I'm definitely
You're
like,
basing I don't want to interrupt you so much, but you're basing that not only off of anecdotal evidence, but you're failing to recognize the statistics. It's like me walking up to a black guy and being like, you're only 13% of the population, but you commit 53% of violent crimes, so you must be a violent criminal. Like I'm never going to base an individual upon their own experiences, right? But I still need to acknowledge the fact that like that's true,
I agree.
right? So
Yeah,
it's like trying to find a balance between those 2 points. So like I understand that maybe you've met a lot of people and there are definitely statistics that back up the fact that online relationships, when successful, they're happier. People who met online, when the relationships are successful, they're happier than people who met through natural means. But the number of people who have successful online relationships is lower than the people who meet through natural means. And that's a big difference. Is like the way things used to work is like if you didn't have the internet, how did you meet people? You had friends. And you'd be like, wow, like, I'm in a point in my life where I'm ready to date. And some girl would be like, oh, I know somebody who'd be great for you.
Right.
I'll tell her about you. And you'd set up blind dates and all these other sorts of things, or you'd meet organically. Like you'd see a girl that you saw at the restaurant, she was kind of cute, and you'd pass crosswords back and forth. Or like, however, you know
Right.
what I mean? Give her your phone number, sort of thing. But it's not like that anymore. It's all instant. It's all instant. It's left, right, left, right, left, right. Like the face, don't like the face, don't care.
But so a couple points. So number one, it can still be like that, and it is still like that. I've actually met people that way as well. I've met people in real life. I've passed notes. I've gotten numbers. I've met people through friends and hooked people up through friends. So that still happens. And in addition to that, there's kind of like a hybrid thing that goes on, and this is kind of the principle that I'm trying to do. I'm trying to bridge the gap with Nectar and kind of like do that kind of like an organic through friend kind of connection, but still
Hmm.
harness the power of technology. So that's one piece. Another thing I wanted to say was, so I gave this kind of anecdotal presentation. That was my first take on it. And so like the first thing I want to say is that I'm not trying to deny statistical evidence necessarily. It's just that my step one, my number one angle, the first thought that I have is anecdotally based, and I think that that's good to base things on anecdote because it's what you've experienced directly. Of course, you should not deny the statistics, and you should consider that, and there should be a balance between the two. But I do think that anecdotal evidence is very important because that's your direct experience, and that's again it's a balance though. So those are just a couple points there.
Oh no, definitely. Anecdotal experience is always going to shape your worldview, and I don't deny that. My opinion on this has nothing to do with my experiences, like trying to date out here in this world.
Out here, out here in the in the woods. Now you live at what is it like in it's Michigan or Wisconsin.
Wisconsin. I live in Milwaukee, Wisconsin.
Like I just wonder like I try to kind of figure out how it might be different culturally, but I feel like it's probably the same phenomenon. Like this being in the same country, like the same kind of general areas. There's cities and suburbs and country areas, and regardless, through and through, people are utilizing these new kind of technology, these new kind of platforms. Um,
I've been most places in the United States except for the West Coast and the East Coast. Like after I turned 18, I moved to Colorado, and then I went to Montana, Indiana, Kansas, and a bunch of other states in between there for a short period of time. Everywhere is the same. I don't think that anything's going to be dramatically different unless you go to the coasts.
yeah, I agree.
Like,
Yeah, definitely the regions themselves have a lot of commonality. And yeah, there may be a little bit of, I'm sure there's a little diversity and little pockets of culture and things here and there, but I definitely think you can speak generally about the kind of patterns that we're seeing across the country. And
it's small towns versus big towns. Look at the results of any political election. All the cities are liberal and all the countrysides are red.
yeah, and that's what we talked
Been
about.
that way forever.
I think it was you and I that may have talked about that. It may have been Kyle, but oh yeah, I think it was Kyle. It was like
People aren't using Tinder out in Zor, a population of 100 people,
yeah.
right? You upload it and you have like two people to choose from, and then after that, there's nobody in a 100-mile radius.
And you already know those people because like if it's a small town.
Yeah.
So I kind of want to talk about Tinder because so I'm planning on having a pretty big dating. I'm designing Nectar. I'm designing a social network, and of course, a big part of the social kind of relationships is focused on explicit relationships. So I think a lot about Tinder. I've thought about a lot about Tinder. I've thought a lot about how I feel about it, and I've used it in the past, and I just think about how I want to maybe
Did you get
improve
laid?
it. Huh? No, no, fuck, no.
Poor guy.
Not from Tinder. Not from Tinder.
Poor guy.
That's the bottom line.
I've
So
I've slammed so many chicks off of Tinder. It's about the mindset, I guess, though.
yeah, and maybe like I said, maybe there's some kind of understood context going into it, and that's just maybe not the thing I was looking for. But I think what really killed me about Tinder was just the actual mechanism of swiping. I was just kind of
You
like,
bro-
"Hey, can you hear me? You get we good?"
Repeat. Yeah, yeah. I think we're back. I did have a break, but say whatever you just said after what I last said, 'cause
So
that's when it started.
So I was just saying, like, so I was saying that I think that, like, maybe your approach to relationships really clicked more with the kind of the background context with Tinder. Like, maybe there's kind of an understood social contract behind Tinder and the kind of people you meet and what's to be expected. Maybe that's part of it. And I think for me though, like beyond really what got me was just the mechanism of Tinder, like just the idea of swiping through people, and I was just like I was just like I don't want to do this. I don't want to have to swipe through people. Like one of the things that really appeared to me, and one of the ways that I really want to improve upon it, is like, hey, if I could just like kind of like how I'm sure other websites like Match.com do it, you can actually put your interest in or actually build somewhat of a basic psychological profile, and that can be used to filter like 90% of these people I'm swiping through. Like, this is just taking so much time like to swipe through all these people. Like if I could filter it based on certain physical characteristics or certain margins that I don't want to like, go above or beyond, like I mean, it sucks to say, but like for example, weight. Like you could do like a weight filter, and or whatnot, and that's
I know that I had brought up Tinder, and I know that it's not even like the main point of like my opinion, because like we had Plenty of Fish long before we had Tinder. We had other dating websites long before Tinder, Christian Mingle, all that sort of stuff. Like we've had that for a long time, right? Like Tinder just breaks it down to the most aesthetic purpose, right? It's simply, are you cute or not? How good can you make yourself look in a photo or not?
hot or not. Pass, pass. Damn.
There like nobody reads the profiles 99% of the time.
See,
And
so that's what I'm saying though. That's something, and that's why I wanted to bring attention to it, because I want to talk about this kind of culture that's there, where it's kind of like people don't care about that kind of stuff. It is just about the looks, and that's why I think it's kind of attracted
on
more.
Tinder, there's still other dating
Exactly.
websites, and I think that my point still applies to those other sorts of websites.
Okay, so
Like, did you ever see that Black Mirror episode? It was something the DJ.
people have recommended all kinds of episodes, and I haven't watched them, unfortunately. I know Black Mirror's really got a lot of commentary.
Sit the fuck down and watch Black Mirror. But there was an episode about this DJ thing where so the basic premise of the episode was this guy meets this girl in a building, right? They matched on a dating app, and they go in there and they talk to each other. They don't even have sex, and then they get these messages like, this is how long your relationship will last. Like, you will be with this person until this timer runs out. And like, he gets one night with this girl, and then they have to separate, and after that he goes through a bunch of bad relationships, and they ultimately end up together, and they find out, wow, like we've been part of this entire like computer program that was trying to decide whether or not they'd work. And at the end of the episode, it shows them like meeting at the bar, like they match on a dating app. Like the entire episode took place in a computer program that was designed to tell them whether or not they'd work together, and the computer program deemed them appropriate. So one thing that I conceptualized when I was thinking about dating apps was exactly what we were talking about, building a psychological profile and seeing like what kind of people mesh together when it comes to stuff like that. And like, you wouldn't get thousands of people to choose from. It would be like, these are the 3 people that we thought that we know you'd work with. Pick one.
Hell yeah, I like that.
I don't like that.
Why not?
Because it's not. I mean, I guess I do like that. I thought of it, but some part of me doesn't approve of that, because it opens up levels of different sorts of manipulation and stuff like that. And I definitely think that when you're taking tests, there's a lot of user error. Like self-reported tests are the worst way to establish a statistic. Like, I would never ask you a bunch of questions and then assume that I know something about your demographic based upon your self-reported test results.
Right.
Like, I'm never gonna. I guess I don't know how to explain it very well, but I definitely know that self-reported test results are not accurate most of the time. People lie. You'll ask a bunch of 17-year-olds in high school if they smoke weed, and even though half of them do, only 25% of them will say yes.
Yeah, I agree.
Ask a bunch of people why they decided to get an abortion, and like most of them are gonna say because of a lie. They're gonna lie about why they decided to do it.
And I guess a lot of that is because the context surrounding those particular questions, and whether or not they may feel like they're going to be judged, or there's going to be something about it.
Even if it's anonymous.
Well, what if it's a question that doesn't really make that doesn't really make people feel like there's anything to be compromised, that there's anything to be exposed? If it's just a question like, hey, do you like this or that? Like, people love these tests that you can take where it says that like you're this type of person, or like people like that. It's kind of like biofeedback. It's almost like kind of getting.
It's not personal though. It's not usually very personal, is it? Asking somebody if they've had an abortion, asking somebody how many times they've had a one-night stand, that's personal. Trying to find out what fucking flavor of Triscuit cracker you are from a BuzzFeed quiz is not the same as taking some of those more personal experience questionnaires.
I guess I'm kind of like, I'm thinking about maybe something in between the two. Like the kind of tests that I'm kind of thinking about, the kind of ones that I want to design and connect, are the kind of ones where it's like, just kind of like trying to, it'll ask you some questions, um, like, to kind of help define your personality, your morality. Like, are you introvert or extrovert? Do you like kind of trying to gauge your sense of humor, and maybe by using particular.
So would you think that you'd want to match people who are like or same? Because I think oftentimes people need to balance each other out. I think that's what works best in a relationship. Like they've seen oftentimes that people they report in the news all of the time relationships where like a conservative male is dating a feminist female and it doesn't work out, but a lot of the time those relationships are the best ones, the ones where people have conflicting ideologies.
Yeah, I agree. I wouldn't necessarily make the assumption right off the bat that, like, especially for things like personality, like if it's something like interest, like, hey, you like this type of movie, well, that's pretty explicit. Like, yeah, I'd probably match people who like the same movie. But when it comes to
I'll
like,
just talk to you forever about Always Sunny in Philadelphia.
Yeah, pretty
until
much.
We're fucking 80.
Hey, that's the life that some people want to live, you man. But when it came to things like personality, yeah, I wouldn't just assume that same meets same. Like you're saying, there's different kind of subtleties and whatnot. And I think the way that I would address it if I was designing a platform and I was trying to design matching algorithms is I would kind of like, number one, I would kind of just experiment with it at the beginning. There's a lot of things you can do. Like, for example, you can.
That's what they're doing, though. It's like the Google profiles, right? Like, you can go to, like, my Google ad space right now. I don't know if that's, like, the exact thing you'd want to type in, but you can type in, like, on Google, like, my AdSense profile, and it'll pull up this thing about you, and it'll show you, like, what they assume that your interests are right now. And it's 50-50. They have as much a chance of being right as they have as much a chance of being wrong. Right? It's 50-50. So even though half of the shit's going to be wrong, half the shit is going to be right, and these things are only going to get better. They're only going to get more informed about how to actually use this data to profile you.
And that's good.
Right now it's in its infancy. This has only been around. Well, how long has the internet been around? I think since like 2005. Let's just say 2005 because that's when YouTube started. I think that's when everybody really got into the internet, was when YouTube came around. It's really young, 14 years old, 20 years at the max, and they already are 50-50 on your personality, your personal beliefs and your ideologies, and they understand all of that shit. Probably more than they'll ever let on.
And I think that's good. I'm down. I'm like, hell yeah. Like, the internet understands who I am. It can cater my experience to me. Of course, it could be bad though.
Again, but this pulls back to the Faustian bargain thing, right? Like, that can be a good, but it has a lot of potential for being bad. And a lot of the time in society, when you make Faustian bargains, things don't play out well for you.
So what is?
I want all of this good, but I'm gonna ignore the possibility for the negative. And we've seen it time and time again. Like, we've seen it time and time again where all of these people try to do the things that you were trying to accomplish, and they get shut down. I don't want to remove the hope for that, but I want to be more realistic about my approach to it.
Yeah, I definitely agree that there's definitely a balance to be found. I could be more realistic. But I don't really see what's the Faustian bargain here about giving your information online. Like, what are you really trading off there? Like, what is the loss? Like, you're not. I guess privacy. Is that a sellout if you're kind of being more transparent? I don't really see it that way.
Have you ever heard of psychographics?
Yeah, we talked about it in the original podcast. Yeah.
Yeah, so I can, like, look at somebody's Fitbit data and, like, know when they're menstruating, know their age, like, take all of their demographic information, and then compare that to the different things that they say and build a much deeper profile on them.
Yeah. I mean that's something I think it's inevitable. So I think the question is that we need to just kind of have
What is the purpose of that? To manipulate.
Well,
is manipulation good?
No.
We talked about that. Is manipulating people okay? And that's why they want all of that data, so they can manipulate us to buy more things.
Wait, you're leaping to a conclusion and an assumption there. You're assuming that collecting data, the intention is manipulation. It's not necessarily so.
What is the point of any big business these days?
To make money, generally. Okay. But see that you got to think about, okay, like, that's the bottom line is profit. But you can take the next step and say, how am I arriving at that profit? Because, like, a lot of times whenever a company wants to make profit, they want to help the user. They want to actually create something that has benefit to the user. So it's like, it's not necessarily, you can't assume that it's manipulation. They could be just trying to, hey, we're trying to collect data so that we can improve your health habits, so we can give you feedback, so that we can give you recommendations. we're trying to help you. Like there is a such thing as collecting data for an altruistic and an end user focused purpose that wouldn't be considered manipulation. I think that you're jumping to that. I think that's not necessarily true.
Right now, what you and me are doing is completely nonprofit motivated. I don't expect to make a dollar off of this, and I don't think you do either.
And that's another point too, which is that whenever I start a project, I consider the potential of it. I consider, hey, this could turn into this. This could turn into that. This could turn into profit.
But you don't expect that.
Yeah, it doesn't have to be that because there are other elements, and I guess that's kind of what I'm.
You don't have thousands of people relying on you to be successful with your methods to make sure that they keep a roof over their head.
Right, not yet. But I believe that if I was in that situation, I would behave the same way, and I would believe the same things.
I don't think when it comes to a company that employs hundreds of thousands of people that it's any longer about anything but sustaining the business and doing what's best for the business, for the organism. It's the same thing as the government. Why did the government get as big as it is? The United States was intended to be the smallest government ever, and it's the biggest one that's put the most people in prison ever.
I don't think it's necessarily. I think it's less about growing to the size explicitly, and it's more about just kind of the divorcing from the original intention in general, which can happen in a bunch of ways. Yes, growing larger in size is one way that it kind of may be harder to stay in line with the same principles. Growing farther in time, can be something that gets you farther away from the original principles. Shifting on the leadership to someone else can be those kind of things, but I don't think that that's necessarily inherent. You could maintain a government, you can maintain a business, no matter how big it is, as long as you have the right like leadership and the right, if you keep the right values, you could. I think that the kind of the profit motive, and this kind of idea that companies over time just stop giving a shit about everything except for like just the life of the business. I think that's. I mean, yes, it is a pattern that we see, but again, that's inductive reasoning saying that like that's all cases because of this one case, and I don't think that that's necessarily true in all cases.
No, I can totally agree with you on that, especially with the existence of stuff like DuckDuckGo. Like, I can't argue with that. I definitely think that there are businesses in existence that like truly strive to dissent. But there's lots of companies that don't care about that and still achieve their means to an end, right? But when it comes to all of the platforms that people who use them aren't having conversations like you and me, people who aren't even aware of the different sorts of things that go on in the background of these companies, that's more of the majority than you're probably willing to acknowledge.
I agree. That's the majority, and that's the pattern, and that's a problem.
People who are never ever going to know that the company that they're working through is doing these sinister sorts of things, so they won't switch because they don't know.
Yeah, I agree.
So they have more control. Like, even though everybody hates Facebook right now, they're still bigger than most countries. There are more Facebook users. Like if we were going to take Facebook and make it a country, it would be the biggest country in the world with the most money.
I'd be down. I'm down. But yeah, I mean, yeah, I agree. There's a lot of sinister companies. A lot of people aren't aware of what's going on. My first thought in the next step for me is just because given my context is that I'm trying to design a platform, I'm trying to build a company, I'm trying to maintain the principles, I'm trying to be transparent to the user, I'm trying to build a culture to where people understand and they trust what's going on with data. I'm trying to get people more familiar with that process because I think it's inevitable, and really again it's just one of those things where you're confronted with a situation where technology can be used for good or bad, and a lot of people's natural reaction is we just need to go backwards and just not use the technology or push it off. And I never think that that's the answer. I think the answer is just
and
to.
I guess that's the. Oh, I guess that's the main distinction that I've been making is there's a difference between like shoulds and oughts, right? Like people like if you want to have healthy lungs, you shouldn't smoke, right?
Right.
But I'm not going to tell anybody that they can't smoke.
Right.
Like if you want to have a successful marriage, you should wait to have intercourse before you get into a long-term relationship as long as you can, right? Like sex on the first date is not good. Most relationships that have sex on the first date, they don't work
Yeah,
statistically,
it
right?
basically,
Like
yeah.
you can do that. That's your decision, and I'm not telling me that you can't, but what is good for society, right? Like and that's the thing that I was like I've been trying to get at a lot lately is like I don't want to take away people's freedom to do what it is that they want to do. Like if you want to cut off your dick, go ahead and cut off your dick. Do I think that's what's best for you at the end of the day? No, but that's your choice.
Yeah, and I'm not accusing you or framing you of that's not my approach to this. I'm not trying. And maybe you this is I'm assuming that this is what you were assuming that
I,
but
I want to
that
make that clear to anybody
yeah,
who's
yeah.
deciding to listen.
Well, yeah, that's good. I mean, I guess I won't go too deep into it. Like I agree with you in that clarification that yes, we're talking about these things, but a lot of people assume if you make an assertion, they're like, oh, you want to outlaw this and you want to make it illegal for anybody to be against you.
No,
Yeah, we're absolutely
absolutely not.
we're just kind of
I'm
saying,
totally cool with Tinder. I use Tinder.
yeah,
I
yeah.
get plenty laid off of it because I'm not trying to get into a relationship in this current climate with shit like divorce courts.
Oh yeah. Yeah, but just in terms of like how I want to live and the kind of infrastructure that I want to build and the kind of projects and companies that I want to support, yeah, these are definitely the things that you want to look for and that you want to, look against. So I wanted to kind of come back to like what we can kind of like center this around what maybe is you feel like what would be your main point within this context of like of technology and what it's done to the dating world. Like what would be like your central? You may have multiple points, but like what is one of your main points with regard to that? Do we feel like we've kind of touched deeply on what we started out with?
Social media is breaking apart the framework and moral character of society
Social media is breaking apart the what do you say the moral framework
and character of society.
and character of
It's
society.
changing everything. The internet has changed society.
I agree. I would
And
agree.
I don't necessarily think that it's good.
See, that's the thing is, yeah, I would agree that it's breaking it up. I would agree that it's changing things, it's shaking things around, and so then so like I would agree there. And then yeah, the next question is it good? Is it bad? How much of each? And I definitely think that's something we've seen throughout our technological discussions. Is I'm a lot more optimistic when it comes to how technology is changing things, and my general approach is just like, hey, let's just jump on top of it, and let's just like have these conversations and kind of take a smarter, better, more prepared approach. Um, but we've definitely gone into some of the reasons why we feel like it is bad or it could be bad. And we've also covered some of I guess I've kind of rebutted with some of the ways that I feel like it could be good with the between the matching and stuff like that. So maybe we feel like we've kind of covered both sides of that in general. I don't think either of us is going to come to some kind of inherent conclusion that yes it's good, yes it's bad. Of course it's a gray area, and we've covered a lot of the kind of both sides of the spectrum. So maybe we can kind of tie it out.
I totally think that. I think we totally both agree on the point that it's good. I just think that you're neglecting all of the horror that is actually happening because of it. I don't disagree. Like I'm going into the tech. Like I'm going into ISD. You interviewed somebody that I take a class with. The entire reason that I want to get involved in this field is because I want it to be good, but I don't think current actors are operating in that fashion.
Okay, so if you feel like I'm not really kind of seeing or accepting some of the negative components, or and maybe some of the people who watch this aren't either, like then I'm down to go a little bit further into it. So if you want to like summarize
Okay,
what
well let me ask you this: have you ever heard of the Tuskegee experiment?
that sounds very familiar, but I can't remember what it is off the top of my head.
I'm pretty sure it was when they infected a bunch of African Americans with syphilis, and then they just let them walk around without curing them to
Right,
see what would happen in society,
right,
right?
yeah,
So Facebook constantly performs experiments on its users. If you have been a user of Facebook, you've had an experiment done on you. They've come out and said that. That's in the news now. Like they've done experiments to manipulate your emotions to try to find out how the spread of fake news operates. They've done experiments to try to find out how many people reach out for things on Facebook and the kinds of responses people have to that. Even if you go into your comment section and you start typing something but then delete it and don't post it, Facebook saves that, and they pay special attention to self-censorship. That is like one of their most important experiments. Like, do you think that it's ethical or that a company should be allowed to operate an experiment on its users without informing them of that?
so I mean, Number one, I believe that they do inform you of that, but of course, it's just that problem of no one really reads the privacy policy. So, and so ultimately, the bottom line is, and it comes back to something we've talked about before. Yes, I believe that companies are free. Like the companies are private, they're private. Like you can, if you don't like it, don't use their platform. Otherwise you're agreeing to their contract. And so
Yeah, but they do violate their own terms of service.
Do they?
That's why it's been in the media, is because they do violate their own terms of service. The things that they say they will do, they don't do, and they try to get away with it.
So I mean, I would agree. Like if they
it's just like government corruption. They will tell you that they have these rules and regulations set up around them that prevent them from doing things, but that doesn't necessarily stop them from doing things.
Yeah, so I agree with that they should be transparent about what they're doing as part of their I mean, I guess technically, I mean, I have like a libertarian mindset, like so libertarian that like I even like think beyond like the laws themselves. I'm like fucking that they shouldn't even be regulating that. But yes, companies should. I think they're regulated to have a privacy policy to let you know what's being done with the data. There's legal backing into that. So from a legal standpoint, and I do believe, I believe from an ethical standpoint that I would like for a company to tell you everything that they're doing. I don't necessarily believe they have to. They're free. I think that they're free not to. Like if a company wants to do sketchy shit with your data, and they're free to do that. But if they get caught, it's gonna make them look bad. It's gonna make me not trust you, and it's maybe not gonna use your app. So that's kind of like the bargain here. And I think
I guess that's like one of the things that's drawing me a little bit more from libertarianism, is because like I always understood it to be like something like, I don't need a government regulation because I'm never going to support a company that's going to pollute the ocean, right?
Yeah.
Like like let's remove government and say that like, Coca-Cola has like 22 tons of nuclear waste that they produce every day for whatever reason, and they just dump it in the ocean. There's no regulation on it. Why would I keep supporting the company if they can bury it, hide it, and nobody cares when like it's exposed and it's called conspiracy theory? Like, what does it matter?
So here's a big point.
Especially when they can build a psychological profile on you and manipulate you into thinking that never even happened.
So one thing that I wanted to bring, because this has been a common thread throughout these discussions, is that like, and you were talking about this idea of like whenever things like Google and Facebook become big enough, they kind of should move into some kind of public domain to where they become more regulated. And I definitely think that's interesting, but I don't necessarily agree with that. What I think is going to happen, and what I think it needs to happen, and what I'm actually working to make happen, is this idea that new competitive platforms will emerge. A lot of what allows Facebook to kind of do this is like, yeah, people disagree with what they're doing, but there's not really anything that's that much better out there. So what we really need is we just need more competition. We need a market with more options, with more social media platforms, with more diversity. And luckily, more and more generations, each younger generation is more familiar with technology, that they grew up with these platforms so that they can think about how to make it better. And so I think moving forward, we're going to have the market's going to be opened. I think that it's kind of, because Facebook was like a completely new concept and it kind of just blew up. But I think that's what's going to happen is that especially because of Facebook is shooting themselves in the foot so much, same with YouTube, they're fucking themselves over. The way they handle data, the way they handle privacy policies, the way they handle users, the way they censor, the way that they're doing all this is really fucking themselves over. And I just think
how do you fund Nectar without advertisers?
So I see there's three main kind of
and how do you get advertisers without selling your customer data?
All right, so there's there's three. Okay, so there's two traditional means of monetizing social media. One is advertising, and one is just like straight selling data, which is kind of hand in hand, really. And
do you think that a subscription fee might be necessary?
So there are a myriad of different different policies when it comes to software. Whether it's a straight download, a subscription fee, there are different or like you can have certain features, but certain features are locked. There's different ways to go about it, and so I'll talk about my business model. So I may try to incorporate various things down the road, but starting out at the beginning, what I really want to do is I want to essentially create an in-app currency, and it may be blockchain just for the sake of it. But I want to create an in-app currency, and what I do with that is I kind of use that to incentivize users in certain directions, and basically to pay users for certain things, to pay users for certain behaviors, to pay users for putting data in. And then whenever the users want something out of the system, if they want to run a big query, if they want to match with somebody, I basically have these kind of like little microtransactions built in, and they can say, hey, hey, here's a button, you click it, I'll match you with like 5 people who are compatible, and that button costs like 200 of my in-app currency, and basically I give
Have you
people
heard of Mines?
mines actually have, yeah, because Jordan Poole, sorry, is it Jordan Poole? No, it's
Tim Pool.
Tim Poole. Yeah, sorry, Tim Poole. I watched a video of his and saw where he was talking about mines. And I went and checked it out, and yes, it does have some of that built in. It has crypto built in. It has, and that's becoming more and more common. I actually saw a website even before that basically generates
Crypto's
monetization.
gonna definitely be mainstream. Like, did you hear about what happened in Venezuela? Do you hear about how they're fixing their economy?
No, I haven't.
Crypto.
Interesting.
They're trading Pepe memes, and they're putting cryptocurrency underneath it. So like when you go to the store, you give the guy a Pepe meme, and it's funded with a however much in Bitcoin and shit, and that's how they're paying for stuff over there now.
That's cool as fuck. That is beautiful, dude.
It is pretty fucking cool, isn't it?
Wow, fucking memes.
And that's what makes me still believe in what you're saying, but it's really hard for me to believe it.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know, man. Like I've already seen it in action. I see the idea in my head. I see the possibility. I'm in the middle of it. Like I know it's gonna happen, and I'm just optimistic about it. And
I try to put all of my effort into it too. And like I said, that's why I'm trying to get into the business and stuff like that. Like I want to be a force for good. I want to be able to get behind the back door, and I want to be the guy who can like take your entire idea and program it for you. I want to get behind somebody who has like a vision like you do and be able to make that happen for you.
Hell yeah. And I'm definitely looking to connect with those kind of people, like as moving forward, and kind of build that culture, the business culture, and also the consumer culture.
But it's just like when you know things like BLM feminism funded by George Soros, it's like you have to acknowledge the fact that there are bigger actors, there are bigger forces, and sometimes the bigger guy's just gonna win.
I agree, but I think the trend is against the bigger guy, because essentially, like in traditional hierarchy, economic hierarchy, power hierarchies, basically it's a balance between there's the people at the top, and then it's a question of how well can the people at the bottom come together to keep the people at the top in check. And I think the more that we move forward with technology, the more it gives us the tools to work together and create transparency and keep the people in the top in check. And that's a big part of what I'm trying to incorporate into Nectar, and perhaps as a partially maybe separate component where I'm trying to take a new approach to the whole political spectrum. And those are the big things, is saying, hey, let's connect people together at the bottom so that we can work together to keep the people at the top in check. And then a big part of that is transparency in general. So if you think about it like a pyramid, Nectar helps create transparency at the bottom, which connects people together.
Can you do that again, but move it a little bit more over here? A little bit more. There you go. I'll be a fucking screen cap for somebody.
Nectar, yeah. So yeah. Illuminati, I'm trying to bring people together at the bottom to resist the top, and also have transparency at the top, and more layers in between. So I'm trying to do a lot of stuff like that. I think that's just the way to go. It's the way to go is forward, is through technology. But of course, we have
hierarchy. I would rather disorganize society. I would much rather for like if we could make anonymous, like the structure of the organization anonymous, operate in society. I think that's what would make us best off.
Well, that's an interesting thing too, because we see hierarchies and centralization as like a trend in evolution just because of the nature of it. But we're now look at how like the phenomenon of cryptocurrency is kind of showing that these kind of peer-to-peer decentralized nodal networks may be the new kind of structure. And so if we're economics is the foundation.
If we make it happen, because the people who are in charge are not trying to have that happen. They want to keep their power. They don't want to decentralize.
Yeah, of
power.
course, there's going to be resistance, but I think it's built into it, man.
From the most powerful people on the planet.
Yeah, no, it's definitely a big struggle, but it's going to happen. Like it's just going to happen. It's already happening, and it's just like, yes, we all have a role to play, but I think that just like statistically, mathematically, objectively, this thing is just moving forward, and yes. Objectively, these fuckers, these Soroses, are gonna really fight it. But I mean, I have to believe that the good is gonna prevail, and a big part of that, I know that I have a part to play in.
Did Brexit happen? Did Brexit work out?
I don't know. I'm not. I don't. You tell me.
That's
I don't know.
Something I guess the listeners can find out for themselves again. Go ahead and let me know if Brexit worked out or not. But just to draw it back to like the original point to get back to the whole e-dating thing, but or not even just necessarily e-dating, but e-thots and stuff like that. Like why is it that you think that women are utilizing the platform in that manner? Do you think that that's something that has always been existing, that like women have been like low key, you know, whatever you want to call that sort of behavior?
Promiscuous
Has
or
that always
whatever.
been a thing? Where
Yeah.
does that come from? What happened?
No, I
Because
think.
I think a lot of it goes back to single motherhood. I think that it's terrifying how many people are raised in single motherhood homes. Because go ahead.
I was just gonna say I think there's a lot of factors involved. I think in terms of like whether you would call it promiscuity or how women kind of act. I think that I mean gender roles have been shifting and changing in general. Same for men. I think the story is maybe a little bit more interesting or a little more. It's easier to tell what's happening with women. Like women have definitely had to fight for rights. They had to fight to come up. They've gotten a lot more sexually expressive, and I think that's all. I think that's all good in general. I think that, and of course I think it's a balance. There's a balance between like modesty and promiscuity or whatnot. But I think that traditionally as a society we've been very oppressive, and I think it's pretty good. It's a good revolution to see. Uh, yeah, to see girls kind of breaking out and sorry, I just got a notification that my fucking disk space is full, so it's like I gotta.
No, that's fine. Hold on one second.
Let me let's pause for a second. I need to move some of these videos off of here.
Yeah.
Let's move them over here. There you go.
All right, go ahead.
But yeah, I think it's a balance. I do think that women have been becoming more kind of sexually open, or as a society, we've become more sexually open, and I think that's good in a lot of ways. But again, it is a balance. We don't want to lose touch with the modesty and self respect, and I think it is a spectrum. A lot of women are still very modest. Some are a lot more promiscuous. I'm not too like I don't feel too much of a way. I don't feel very upset that women are promiscuous. I'm fine with it. Honestly, like I haven't, like I find myself attracted to girls who are actually very open and promiscuous. Like I know there's this traditional idea where it's kind of like, if a girl's really promiscuous, and that then she loses her value to a man who wants someone who is faithful to him. But I don't know. I just believe that that's kind of like a primitive mechanism of men who want to kind of try to like dominate and contain and be kind of selfish in that nature and not let women be as expressive. It's kind of like an ownership property kind of thing, and I think that's a little bit antiquated. And so I think I'm relatively progressive in that, and but I do appreciate a degree of modesty, but honestly, more than modesty, I think I appreciate the rebellious spirit. I appreciate the intelligence, and these are characteristics that a lot of times you will see in these women who are very promiscuous. They're very open and they're very expressive. They're challenging norms. They're challenging the established kind of gender roles, and I'm pretty for that. I do think we've had an unhealthy oppressive culture in the past.
Just give me a second to process myself before I start screaming. Okay, so you want to take the traditional values that allowed us to build our current society, flip them on their head, and you expect everything to be okay.
So number one, it's not. I don't think it's fair to say that our society was built upon those morals necessarily. Like those two
Yes,
things.
they were. Everybody who came here was Christian. They came here to escape Europe. They were persecuted over in that country. They came over here. They practiced Christian values, and that's what built this society.
Uh,
That is what created the Constitution.
eh. I think it was founded in human rights. I mean, and there's a correlation between
Then why didn't we
human
give
rights and
slaves
Christian.
rights right away? How come we didn't give women rights right away?
So So what are you saying? Are you saying that, so okay, so it was founded, number one, the founding fathers, a lot of them were very deistic, so they were almost as like rational as you could be in the time, like, and not like not doctrine
Some
based.
of them were deists, some of them were atheists, some of them were Christians, and some of them were other things, right? Like it came from a wild
I agree.
different amount of perspectives. Like I've read the Federalist Papers, I've listened to all the different arguments. I know that like, they weren't even friends. Most of the people weren't even friends. They hated each other. They just showed up in a room and talked to each other
Yeah, and so that I think
because they
that would
knew they were the
argue.
brightest minds of the time.
I think that gives my point credibility, which is saying that it's not the country that wasn't necessarily founded in Christian values and modesty and stuff. I don't think that's necessarily fair to say. I think that was
Yes, it is because most of them were Christian. It was voted in majority.
yeah, and I don't think, and again, I think I want to make a separation here between political law and doctrine and cultural doctrine. Um, yeah, like there's definitely a difference between the political kind of things that we can actually see in the documentation, and then like how like what was not explicitly said that you can't do, but what was shunned. Like if women were very promiscuous in the time that this
They
country
didn't
was
do that
founded.
back then. That wasn't a
Exactly,
thing.
because it was shunned upon. There was a cultural law, not an explicit political law that said you can't do this, but it was a cultural law where they would be shunned by by society or by their
Okay,
family.
so we're changing the laws, and we'll go back to the Faustian bargain. What have we seen as an effect of this?
So
Record low birth rates. Pull up that article that I sent you.
so
Record high STD rates in women. Pull up that. Record high number of women in their 40s who are unhappy because they never had children. Pull up that.
okay,
Record high number of people who can't find long-lasting relationships. Incels, like all of these different societal ills.
right.
Like
I see that, but it's what is it? Correlation does not necessarily imply causation. So there's a correlation.
Well, in this case, it does, and I understand that that's true. But this is a correlation causation. Like they have directly linked the teen suicide rate skyrocketing to social media. Like it is changing everything.
I agree. I agree that technology is changing a lot of things. I agree that culture is changing. I agree that there is some statistically objective fact to how it's becoming bad in some ways. But I think there would be equal statistics that show a lot of things that are improving about it.
Such as, give me an example.
I mean, I don't do the research. I didn't do the research. I don't have the statistics, but like, I mean, all I have is like anecdotal evidence to speak from and what I've seen. And like, I know in my own life, like, I mean, the fact that I had number one that I had access to information itself has created monumental changes in my life and in society. Like, there's no way that you could deny that the strides that we've made in science and technology and economics and all of these realms have heavily been in business, like, because of technology. Like, technology is insanely powerful. It's so it's done a lot of these great things. It's allowed us to live in this luxury. It's allowed us to have this conversation right now. You live on the other side of the country. If it weren't for technology, you neither one of us may even be as intelligent as we are, because we may not have even had access to the information, and we may not have had access to people who could reaffirm this information for us.
Oh
So
no, I'd be a complete idiot. I'd be drunk in an alleyway somewhere right now without the internet.
that's what I'm saying is, like, yes, we've kind of maybe departed from some of these traditional moral values, but we've gained all this. And so really the ultimate point is that it's another balance to be found. It's the balance between conservatism and whatever, like being progressive.
He's like it's a Faustian bargain, but I really like all the gains.
But I mean, that's just like I don't even like the idea of I don't like that. I don't know if I'll necessarily like objectively deny that it's a Faustian bargain, but I just don't feel like that metaphor / analogy really fits it, because to me it's less of like a trade-off and more it's just, I mean, I guess things it is somewhat of a trade-off in some ways, but I think a Faustian bargain implies that it's inherently negative, but I don't think that it is so. It's just times are changing. We lose some things, we gain others. There are some conservative values that we should keep in touch with, like valuing the family and valuing like healthy relationships.
It's not gonna matter because like as I said, like we have reached like record low birth rates. Most of the women that I meet immediately express to me their desire to never have children, right? It's not gonna matter once we finally implement artificial wombs. Those are on the way. Guaranteed between now and the next 10 years, we will have artificial wombs. Like the requirement for having children will just disappear. You'll be able to take your sperm, swab your cheek, and make your own kid if you can afford it.
Yeah.
That's great. Awesome, right? But like, what does that do to society? Because now you're a single father raising a kid who will never understand the emotional side of things, right? Because men are generally more logical, women are generally more emotional. That's
Right.
just a fact. You can't change that. It's part of evolution, right? It
Right.
goes back to the same thing of why men go out and hunt and women stay home and take
Right.
care of the children, right?
Right.
So we've changed that. Now women also go out to hunt, and we have government systems that take care of our children, and they indoctrinate them into their way of thinking. They're talking about. I just saw a Vice article that was like, well, what if we change the way that we do sex ed and make it more about sexual pleasure? Like, what if we focused on sexual pleasure as a means of sex education instead of, safe sex or all the other things that you learned in sex ed when they went through like drug abuse and all of that sort of shit. They want to flip all of that on its head. The things that you tell your children have an effect on them, and I think that it was when I was a kid, being a homosexual was not necessarily tolerated, but I also saw Will and Grace on TV. Like the things that you put out in the media change society's perspective, and you can't say that Tinder hasn't changed society's perspective, and you can't tell me that it's good when we're hitting record low birth rates.
I agree. I mean, there's a lot of points and a lot of
It,
threads and a lot of angles that kind of spin off of some of what you're saying. It's a very complex issue for sure. I kind of want to I kind of want to boil it down a little bit and kind of like have kind of like a focal point and really just like a kind of a general. I feel like I'm getting kind of the point of kind of like maybe kind of wrapping it up just for this session for sure.
for sure.
And I think that given all these kind of things, given the technological changes, the cultural changes, the way that things are shifting, the good and the bad, all weighed together, I think that I guess the one conclusion to make is that it's just number one, let's just keep thinking about it, keep talking about it, let's keep having these dialogues, let's keep breaking it, let's keep breaking it down and thinking about it, analyzing it. And then from there, we can kind of extract some courses of action, and we can extract some policy from there. We may need to experiment with things a little bit, but all of us want to live our best life, and we want to live. Yeah, and that's what it comes down to. We all want to live our best life, and so it's the question of how can I do that? How can I make decisions? And then how can we build systems that kind of set everybody else up for their best life? So that's our common intention, and again, there's so many threads and conversations to be had, and I'm sure we'll get farther down into that. But that's what we're trying to do, and we're doing the right thing. We're having the discussions, and we're kind of getting it out there. Hopefully, other people will take an interest and give some feedback, and we'll just kind of continue forward with it.
Well, let me ask you three things. How old are you?
23.
Are you in a relationship right now?
Not right now. Not like anything serious or committed. No.
Okay, so how long do you think you have to get into a committed relationship and get married and have kids?
How long do I think I have? I think the timeline for men is a lot more like cushy and longer. Like it takes harder to get. That was actually one of my.
Okay, so you as a 45-year-old can still have children. What is the likelihood that you're going to be able to get with a 23-year-old? Especially as we get more feministic and more free sex.
I mean, again, this is like kind of a whole other thread. Like, I mean, I'll just generally say that I think that it's definitely possible, and it's even, I would say it's I mean, like, if that's the thing about men, is it's more about what you earn, it's more about what you have. The older you get, the more you have, the more you've built up, the more power you have. And these are the things that are like that you have a foundation upon. These are the things that attract women. Whereas when you're a woman,
yeah, you can get like 4 or 5 E-thots.
exactly. But whenever you're a woman, your power comes from your youth. You have to you have the power.
Comes from the uterus.
Well,
the fact that they are the gatekeepers, the ones that are supposed to be making good decisions about who puts their penis in their body, because now they're all having children they don't want. So we have to legalize abortion so that we can kill thousands of babies every day.
That is a good point at talking about gender roles. Is that like women are the gatekeepers. Like evolutionarily, when it comes to like sexual selection, women were the ones who were kind of enforcing that. Because A man just wants to fucking spread his seed everywhere. Like that's evolution.
And he will, and he'll fuck everybody. But now it's all women who are fucking everybody, and they can just go get rid of any unwanted children.
I agree. That is kind of. I mean, and that definitely creates like that. Yeah, it's definitely something to pay attention to. It's definitely something that can be problematic.
Because getting pregnant now is not a commitment anymore, right? And it used to be. And I think that that's important. I think that being able to lock people into relationships, committed relationships, is important. And when you don't require committed relationships in society anymore, it's going to change shit.
Yeah, I agree, and I definitely would like to explore that farther. I definitely want to kind of take some time to kind of collect these thoughts a little bit.
We went off into all sorts of rabbit holes. I don't think we got anywhere near where we wanted to talk about.
But I mean, it was interesting. Like it just goes to show like how much there is to it. Like we just specifically set out to talk about one thing in particular, which is like gender roles in the modern age. And we've opened all of these fucking rabbit holes, and I'm completely down with that, you know. But it's just like we'll definitely we've definitely hit on some points. We definitely developed some points, and so I'm definitely down to continue this discussion. And I
enjoyed the talk. Yeah, for sure.
Hell yeah, man. Well, we'll call it that for today, and we'll pick it up next time.
Yep. All right. See you later.
Hell yeah, bro. See you, man.